Thank you guys and gals for your prayers. The eyes are almost back to normal. Today I wanted to talk to you about the Knights Templars. Imagine that you're traveling back in the 12th century. You have left Europe to go to Jerusalem, not for an adventure, but for faith. And this is one of the most sacred journeys that you can make. It's also one of the most dangerous. The roads are brutal, distances are enormous, and even if you survive the sea, you can still be robbed or raped or even sold into slavery, or worse yet, be killed, especially along the 40-mile stretch from the port of Jaffa to Jerusalem. And many never made it until a small brotherhood was born. 9 men, no wealth, no power, but within 200 years, they will become one of the most powerful institutions in Europe. And then they were hunted, they were tortured, and tragically erased. So let's take a closer look. We are talking about 1119, after the First Crusade. Jerusalem is under a fragile Christian control. But controlling a city is one thing. Securing the road is another thing. So a French knight by the name of Hugh de Payne gathered 8 other companions, and their mission is simple: to protect pilgrims that are traveling to and from Jerusalem, in exchange for shelter and some food. So King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, needing more protection forces, rewarded their cause and gives them a wing of King Solomon's temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And that's their name, the Poor Fellow Soldier of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, which later was shortened to Knights Templars. But here's what made them revolutionary. They combined 2 worlds that were never meant to mix: the monks and the knights. And they took vows of poverty, of chastity, of obedience, but they also trained for war and became fearlessly efficient with strong self-imposed codes. For instance, one is that their rule forbid them from surrendering unless heavily outnumbered, and they could not retreat as long as the Templar banner was still flying. Another one, breaking formation to chase individual glory, was heavily punished. Another one again, their unwavering belief in their cause meant that they were not afraid to die, making them incredibly difficult to break in battle. Also, they carried a 3-foot sword and a 13-foot lance, a dagger, and a Turkish mace besides their chain link garbs. Also, Templars often served for life, making them some of the most battle-hardened soldiers in the region. Basically, these guys were the Navy SEALs of that time. And so for 9 years, they did not grow. And then everything changed when one of the most powerful spiritual voices in Europe enters the scene. His name is Bernard of Clairvaux. He didn't just support them, he legitimized them. He argued that a knight fighting for God was not committing sinful violence, but serving a sacred purpose, holy war. And that idea changed everything. In 1129, at the Council of Troyes in France, the church officially recognized the Templars, who suddenly started to gain popularity throughout France, Portugal, Spain, and even Italy. And also nobility was joining the order. And thus, the influx of donations, gold, silver, grants of properties, and families that entrusted their sons to be part of that order. So what began as 9 men became a trans-European institution. 10 years later, in 1139, Pope Innocent II institutes a bull that makes them untouchable. They were not affected by the local law, they were not liable for taxes, they were not answering to the church or to kings, but only to the Pope himself. They could build churches, buildings, farms, all tax-free. Basically, they became a sovereign kingdom within a kingdom. And by the mid-1200s, they became one of the largest landowners in Europe. They built estate, farms, castles, command centers where they safeguarded money for the rulers. But the real power wasn't just military, it was financial. Since they operated across borders and answered directly to the Pope, they had unusual independence and did something that was basically revolutionary. They moved money safely across long distances. In essence, they created a letter of credit system. Pilgrims traveling with gold were easy targets. And now they could deposit funds in Europe prior to departing for the Holy Land. And they would be given a sealed letter so that they could withdraw funds in Jerusalem minus a fee. That's early banking, guys. But even more interesting, statistically, only 60% made it to destination. And so often the funds, they would accumulate unclaimed in the Templar treasury. And when a nobleman went to a crusade, the Templars would administer that person's estate. So they would collect rents, they would keep the accounts, etc., etc. And here's the paradox. They vowed for poverty, but controlled enormous wealth. Individually, they owned nothing, and collectively, they controlled vast resources. And then everything shifted. The Crusades began to fail. And in 1291, the city of Acre, it was the capital of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, falls to the hands of the Mamelukes. Those were trained professional soldiers that were converted to Islam. And that basically ended the Crusader state. In the meantime, European kings are getting stronger and seek more control over land, or money, armies, and institutions. And the Templars, they don't fit anymore in that system. So King Philip IV of France, the Iron King, is smart, ruthless, and spoiled. He's engaging in war with England. And that made him deeply indebted to the Templar who loaned him money for his campaigns. At one point, the debt rose to over $500 million of today's money. So instead of paying them back, the king thought of a better way. If he attacked their wealth, he would be a thief. But if he attacked their creed, he would be a reformer. So he issued arrest warrants, which he distributed to all the lords and royal officials in the kingdom, to be enforced simultaneously one morning, October 13 of 1307. And the accusation? Heresy, blasphemy, idolatry, homosexual practices. And the Templars did not see it coming and were caught by surprise. About 1,000 of them were arrested with this shocking accusation in different precincts, and false confession was actually extracted from them under torture. Some admitted to spitting on the cross, to secret rituals, to homosexual acts, and life imprisonment was their sentence. 54 did not confess and were burned at the stake in a single mass execution. But what about Pope Clement V? Would he save the rest of those people? Under pressure, he did not, and in 1312, he officially dissolved the order. Interesting that he ordered that the Templars' wealth would be sent to the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Hospitallers, via a papal bull. However, while officially transferred, much of that fortune was seized by secular rulers, particularly King Philip IV. France. And after 5 years from the initial arrest, the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, and another high-ranking leader, they recanted their confession, proclaiming the innocence of the order. And right before burning at the stake in Paris that very evening, Jacques de Molay issued a curse upon his oppressors, Pope Clement V and King Philip IV. They would face divine judgment within the year. Well, Clement V died 33 days after the execution, and Philip IV died 8 months later, before the end of the year. And within 14 years, all of Philip's direct heirs died, ending the king's dynasty. So were they guilty, or were they targeted by envious powers? No one will ever really know. But we know of one kingdom that is to come, that will never be overthrown, never be corrupted or extinguished, because its Grand Master is incorruptible and perfect. And we, his subjects, will enjoy immense inheritances. Have you already enlisted? Love you guys. Catch you next week. Ciao.